You're joining me here today, this morning, at about 5:20 in the morning from my hometown airport, of course, Champaign, University of Illinois Willard Airport. First flight of the day down to DFW, Dallas, on American Eagle Embraer 145. Beautiful morning to fly. Let's head inside the terminal and get checked in. So for those who are wondering, here in the US, despite the really fast vaccination rollout that's been going on the past few months, the mask mandate is still going on by the FAA and TSA until September 13th, I think. So we got about 2.5 months left of wearing masks on aircraft here in the US, and then hopefully by then it'll be back to normal. So we still got a full hour left until boarding. I wanted to get to the airport as early as I could, and it looks like myself and a couple other passengers got here a little too early. As you might have seen in the previous clip, the security checkpoint isn't even open yet, and downstairs the check-in isn't even open either. It's about 5:30 right now, and they said 5:35 is when they will open everything up because they have to do a safety meeting or something. So that just tells you something about this small airport. 5:30 and nothing's open. So myself and a few other passengers were just chilling in this little lounge area by the checkpoint, and give it another few minutes, and then hopefully they'll open the checkpoint, pass through, and then make our way to the gate. Following security, it's great to see Einstein Bros Bagels, the only food retailer in the airport, finally reopening after being closed for over a year. Aside from that, the airport terminal is exactly like you've seen it in previous videos. The early morning is peak time for departures at Champaign, and here you can see 3 Embraer 145 aircraft sitting on the ramp. These aircraft all fly in the night before, spend the night in Champaign, and then depart the following morning back to their respective destinations. This one is going to Charlotte, the one all the way in the back is headed to Chicago, and hiding behind the jet bridge is our aircraft to Dallas. At just over 23 years old, this was the 62nd Embraer 145 ever built, and the 6th oldest regional jet in the entire American fleet.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Good to see more people flying today.
I know,
I took the same flight in November. It was 11
There's
people.
nobody. I know. Now it's like double.
Double. It's
which
crazy.
is good.
It's amazing. I love
Thanks for
seeing
flying
it.
with us.
Thank
I
you
know,
so
me
much.
too.
I'll see you later, man.
Thank you.
The Embraer 145 is the only aircraft in the entire American fleet with an all-economy class configuration. There are 50 seats in a 1-2 layout, and I'll be seated in 15A for the near 2-hour journey down to Texas. The seat itself is pretty basic. First off, you have a large tray table which is fixed in place and unfortunately does not extend towards you. The seat pocket is also quite large and contains a safety card, magazine, and air sickness bag. Despite it being a smaller aircraft, the legroom is quite sufficient for myself being 5 feet 11 inches tall. Finally, individual air vents, reading lights, and call buttons are available as well.
If you haven't already fastened your seatbelt, insert the metal fitting into the buckle and pull the strap so it's tight across your hips. To open your seatbelt, lift the top of the buckle. It is against the law to tamper with, disable, or destroy the lavatory smoke detectors. The safety card in your seat pocket explains the safety features of this airplane.
I flew this very same route back in November 2020, and on that flight there were only 11 seats filled out of a possible 50. Today I am glad to report that this flight was almost completely full with just 3 empty seats. About 30 minutes after departure, we crossed directly over St. Louis. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the best view, but if you look closely in the bottom left corner of this photo, you can see the Gateway Arch and of course lots of barge traffic on the Mississippi River. Another major thing I wanted to point out was the magazine. In case you didn't know, American Airlines is phasing out its iconic American Way magazines from next month, and this June 2021 issue is the last version to roll off the printing press. American introduced this magazine all the way back in 1966 and has since been continuously publishing a new issue every month. The airline claims this to be the world's longest continuously published in-flight magazine. The reason behind American removing in-flight magazines is because the airline feels that times have changed. Passengers don't find magazines as much of an entertainment option anymore, and instead rely heavily on electronic devices for entertainment. As such, American says that its electronic in-flight entertainment options contain far more options than the magazine, and therefore they believe this effectively makes the magazine's role as an entertainment option quite redundant. Now, once magazines are removed, customers will depend on either Wi-Fi streaming or physical IFE screens for entertainment. The good news is that most of American's planes are fitted with Wi-Fi, power outlets, IFE screens, or at least one of those three. The bad news is that there's just one aircraft type in the entire fleet that doesn't feature any of these amenities. This aircraft is of course none other than the Embraer 145. Despite operating over 100 of these planes, American has not retrofitted any of them with Wi-Fi or power outlets, nor do they plan to anytime soon. So whenever you fly this aircraft, it's not such a bad idea to keep a power bank handy, in case your battery runs low. Now granted, these planes are normally used on flights that average 30 minutes to an hour in length, so you could argue that retrofitting the 145s isn't worth it for flights that short. However, this argument becomes invalid when you realize that the CRJ700s and 900s both have Wi-Fi or power outlets, and these planes operate flights similar in length to the Embraer 145. What do you think? Should American really invest in retrofitting the 145s or just keep them the way they are? Leave me a comment below. Besides the lack of modern amenities, the 145 has fairly comfortable seats with adjustable headrests, along with large windows providing great views outside. This flight was very uneventful, and as such I didn't film anything afterwards until we began our descent. Today we'd be arriving in Dallas from the south, so our approach had us fly past the airport and downtown Dallas on downwind before making our base leg and coming into land on runway 35 center. Now that we've landed in DFW, let me quickly summarize the flight. The flight was fine and nothing special. However, there were some things that were noticeably lacking. The most obvious thing is that due to the pandemic, there was no snack or drink service, but I think it's high time that American Eagle reinstated that, given how air travel in the US is pretty much back to normal levels. I was also surprised that upon boarding, we never received the small sanitizing towelettes that you otherwise always receive when boarding American Airlines flights these days. I wonder what the reason for this was, since I received a towelette on both my following 2 flights with American later that day. Finally, as for the aircraft, despite it being 23 years old, it was pretty well maintained. No surprise there, as here in the US, the airlines have great maintenance track records, and as such they keep their planes flying for years on end in great shape. Many people tend to overlook this fact and instead see it as an excuse to bash American carriers for operating old and outdated planes. What they fail to realize is that age is just a number. As long as the planes receive proper routine maintenance, they will continue operating without issue regardless of their age. Bye, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Stay tuned for next week where I'll be taking you on board American Airlines' Boeing 787-9 from Dallas to Chicago. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on that video, and plenty of more trip reports to come this summer. As always, feel free to like the video if you enjoyed and comment below with anything you'd like to share. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.